Hello, 7th, and welcome to Friday Soul Studies lesson. Today's lesson, we are here in Florida. If you look outside the window, we are next to Universal Studios. Some people may ask, why did you choose to present today's lesson from Florida? Well, those are the people that did not watch the video carefully. Because during President Monroe's administration, the United States acquires Florida. So Florida is now a part of the United States. So why not present it from one of your favorite destinations, Universal Studios in Orlando? Let's get to the textbook pages, textbook questions. If you want to follow along with the actual textbook questions, and I'll flip page by page as well, 294 in the text, complete the questions, and you should have them posted from yesterday. If you don't have them posted from yesterday, please do that first. If you don't have both parts done from yesterday, please do that first, the notes and the questions. What I like you to do now is go ahead and take out a pen, or if it's typed, let's type a different color, preferably red. If you just put check marks or just put correct, for all 11, okay, there's not full credit given. So let's just make that clear. So you can't just have check marks. Some people are still doing that. We actually, believe it or not, have some people that still don't listen to the videos. So we got to get to that, guys. Number one, after the War of 1812, British goods were again available in the United States. Why were these imported British goods less expensive than similar American goods? You might ask yourself, how could goods made in a different country all of a sudden be more reasonable, okay, than those made in the United States? Okay, here's what happens, guys. It's the end of the War of 1812, okay? British goods are again going to come into the United States. Take a look at 285 if you need to. British goods are going to come into the United States after the War of 1812. The British had a giant head start on industrialization. So they could make and sell goods more cheaply than America because they were able to get ahead, okay, by making more and selling more goods. British factory buildings and machines were older, okay, and they had already been paid for. American buildings are newer and still needed to be paid for. Americans' factory system was just starting, while Britain's factories, manufacturers had been there for many, many years before. So sometimes the British manufacturers were able to sell cloth specifically in the United States less than it would cost for the U.S. to make it. You know, that's pretty interesting because you have to think about it's getting here, right? Getting here, tax and shipment and everything, it's still cheaper. Well, British manufacturers know they had competition, right? They know they had competition with America. So what they're going to do is eventually they plan to raise the prices of these goods. They didn't say that, right? But that's their plan. It's to lure you in. You know, sometimes even businesses today, they may give you a great deal or a coupon or a Groupon offer. Sometimes you may have used one of those online offers. Then that's to bring you into the place, bring you into the restaurant or into the store, or into the facility. And then the price, that offer is not going to be there all the time, but now you may say, oh, that's a really good restaurant. Now you're not getting a 50% off Groupon anymore. You're paying full price, but you don't care because it's great and you didn't know about it beforehand. So that's to lure in the customer. 2, identify the principal reason the South rejected the American system, Henry Clay's plan to promote economic growth in all regions of the United States. Okay. Henry Clay, he's going to urge Congress, 287 if you want to look, okay? Clay is going to urge Congress to use money from tariffs, from taxes, to build roads, bridges, and canals. Just like today, when they're going to work on the roads, work on the bridges, work on the canals, That's taxpayer money. So he urged Congress to use the money from taxes, from tariffs, to do so. He believed a better transportation system would make it easier and cheaper for farmers both in the West and South to ship goods in city markets. But Clay's American system actually never goes into effect. Tariffs remain very, very high, okay? But Congress spent little on internal improvement. Congress spent very little on new roads, new bridges, canals. Southerners in particular didn't like Clay's plan. And you know why? This part you need to make sure you have. The South had many fine rivers on which they transported goods. So they said, why do we need these canals? Why do we need these roads? Because it doesn't bring us any direct benefit. So they're used to their old ways, and they plan to stick to the old ways. 3. In what ways were the outcomes in McCulloch v. Maryland and Gibbons v. Ogden similar? So how are these similar? So let's take a look. Let's take a look. McCulloch v. Maryland, okay? McCulloch v. Maryland. Let's discuss that first. That's from 1819. The courts ruled that the states had no right to interfere with federal institutions within the borders. So, the court ruled states had no rights to interfere with federal institutions within the borders. That gave more power to the federal government, okay? It allowed more power, gave more power to the federal government, because this particularly allows the Bank of the United States to continue. And the Bank of the United States, right, if it's going to continue, it's going to help the economy to expand. Gibbons v. Ogden, 5 years later, 1824. If you want to follow along, 288, 289, okay? The Supreme Court upheld the power of the federal government to regulate trade between states. So the federal government can regulate, interfere with, look at what's going on with trade between states. So let's say between Connecticut and Florida, between California and Ohio. All right, just so you understand an example. The court ruled that a state could regulate trade only within its own borders. So a state can only regulate trade within its own borders. Connecticut can only regulate trade within the borders of Connecticut. Only the federal government had the power to regulate interstate commerce. Interstate commerce is trade between states, between Connecticut and New York and Rhode Island. Okay, this decision helped the national economy by, making it easier for the government to regulate trade. Here is how they're similar. Please make sure you have this, guys. Number 1, the rulings affect the government. Okay? 2, they change the daily life for people in the U.S. Okay? How, Mr. A? The New York law had given a monopoly or exclusive rights to Robert Fulton's steamboat company to run ferries into New Jersey. So he now has that right. Fulton is allowed to have this steamboat company in 2 states, New York and New Jersey. Okay? That's what you need to think about. Many individuals, okay, realize that these rulings both involve the power of the federal government. Okay? They go ahead and look and examine at the power of the federal government. Okay? They also look at the rights of states too. So that's the similarities you'll see in both. 4, evaluate the argument that a lack of experience in self-government affected the ability of Spain's former colonies in Latin America to form stable democratic governments. So, what I like to focus on here, very carefully, is the lack of experience in self-government, and specifically with Spain. So, what I would like to do is focus on 2 It should be 280, 290, 291, okay? If you want to follow along. Towards the bottom of 291. Spain's former colonies modeled their constitutions close to that of the United States. So they saw what worked in the United States, and they're going to want to model their constitutions the same way. But their experience with independence was very different, okay, with the neighbor from the north, different from the United States. Unlike the people from the 13 colonies, the people in Latin America did not unite. The people in Latin America didn't come together as one, okay? Geography made unity very difficult. You know, 13 original colonies, we had an assessment on that earlier in the year. Geography is not the issue there. Latin America, though, all of a sudden it covers a large area than the 13 original colonies. You have forests, rainforests, mountains, high mountains, the rugged Andes. You had barriers for travel, barriers for communication. The Spanish colonies were spread over a huge area, okay? So several republics are going to form. These new republics, though, had a difficult time. It's not just like our nation, you know, federal government. No, they have these in other republics. It had a hard time setting up a stable government. Under Spanish rule, the colonists had gained little or no experience of self-government. So they haven't any experience. So powerful leaders said, you know what, here's my chance to come into power and to really gain a lot of control. So powerful leaders took advantage of this power to seize control, okay? And as a result, these nations, these new nations, were often unable to achieve democratic rule, a democratic government like we have here in the United States. 5. What might southern slave states have, or why might southern slave states have supported, why would they have supported the acquisition of Florida by the United States? So why would some southern slave states maybe support the United States acquiring Florida? Here's why. Okay, Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, they're essential, maybe you want to jot their names down, essential to going ahead and obtaining Florida. What you want to realize here is this. If you go ahead, this should be page 2, roughly 292 if you want to follow along, okay? What we want to realize here, it's a difficult situation to look at in history. One big reason, okay, would be the following. Florida, you need to know, should have this down. Florida is a refuge for many Africans and African Americans, okay? So southern slave states may have said, you know what, that's a good idea that the United States is going to acquire Florida, because Florida already has people who escaped slavery. So now if the United States owns this territory, maybe the United States can make this a slave state, because there's many escaped slaves already there. Many other southern slave states said, you know what, this is a good opportunity to make Florida a slave state as well. And for those who are not following along and don't understand the Missouri Compromise being that one of the first major points, guys, that we've talked about all year when it comes to the issues of slavery, the Missouri Compromise is trying to keep a balance of slave and free states, okay? But now if you add Florida, maybe kick it the other way. So you have to look at the mindset of these individuals, these state leaders. Red question number 6. Which position did Webster share with Clay? Okay, Henry Clay spoke for the West. Okay, Daniel Webster at the same time is a New Englander. He's from New Hampshire. Okay, Webster opposed the War of 1812. Clay pushed for the War of 1812. Okay, here's what you need to know. They're both very skilled public speakers. They were both lawyers, and they were both senators. Okay, They were both sectional leaders and spokesmen for their region. One second. Hold on. One moment here. No, let's start over for that one. Let me review that. That second part. I want to just clarify. Clay and Webster, okay? They're both great public speakers. They're both lawyers. They're both senators. Good, you have that. They're both sectional leaders, okay, and spokesperson for their region. Here's what I want to clarify. Webster from spokesperson for the North, Clay for the West, okay? Webster against the War of 1812, Clay for the War of 1812. They both, here's a big one you want to have here. This is where I almost got stuck before. Make sure we get this correct. They both supported the idea of a strong federal government. They supported the idea of a strong federal government. Webster wants slavery abolished, okay? Clay supported compromise. And they both are worried, okay, about the country's economy. They're both concerned about the country's economy, and they both defend the Compromise of 1850. Compromise of 1850. They both defend that Missouri Compromise. Take a look at 284 if you want to see the chart on the top. It adds John C. Calhoun as well. You can look at all three. All three are helpful here. Red question. Next one. Why did many states in the South and West oppose the tariff of 1816? Why did many states in the South and West oppose this tax of 1816? Congress passed the tariff of 1816. What that means is it greatly raised tariffs on imports. Tariffs on imports went up. This increase made imported goods more expensive than similar made American goods. Okay? The tariff impacted different regions of the nation in various ways. 286 if you want help. North, West, and South. Okay? They're going to be affected in different ways because they each have a different type of economy. The North, manufacturing. So it benefited the most. Okay? The North benefited from this. The North is going to support this, right? The West and the South are not. They rely heavily on farming. You're going to want to jot that down. They rely heavily on farming. So they're not financially invested in manufacturing. Therefore, they did not experience the same benefits as the North. They felt this benefited the North. Cloth iron become more expensive. So why would the South, why would the West want this if cloth is more expensive, if iron tools are more expensive? The Northerners are going to gain because they're manufacturing. The other sides, the West and the South, are not. Who likes more expensive goods? Who likes more taxes? Not somebody who's losing, somebody who's gaining. 289. How did the decision in McCulloch v. Maryland increase federal power? Please make sure you have this. McCulloch v. Maryland, 1819. The court ruled that states had no right to interfere with federal institutions within its border. Okay? It strengthens federal power, strengthens federal power. The Bank of the United States expands. The Bank of the United States expands under this clause. Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out functions elsewhere in the Constitution. This decision increases the power of the federal government. What you need to know is necessary and proper. Can you jot down necessary and proper? This is really, really important, necessary and proper. The court decision addressed the issue of the meaning of necessary and proper. 288 if you want help. It's the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution. Remember Christian once, he gave us an example. Well, the Constitution might not say U.S. Navy, but that's necessary and proper to the safety of the people within the United States. The federal government had the right to charter a bank under the United States. The federal government could charter a bank under the United States because it's necessary and proper for the country to not just survive, but to flourish for years to come. Red question, next one. What characteristics of physical geography made it more difficult for Latin American colonies to unite than it had been for the United States? What made it difficult, guys? You want to make sure this. Your Latin American, I just said this before, your Latin American colonies are much, Latin America, the geography is more difficult. Spanish colonies more difficult than the colonies, British colonies that became the 13 original colonies, okay? It's more difficult because they're more spaced out. You want to jot that down. There's thick rainforests. There's high mountains. The Andes mountain high, very rugged, difficult to travel. It became a great barrier for both travel and communication. The Spanish colonies are spread over a huge area, so it was difficult to communicate and difficult for the colonies to communicate, to rule. So that's why you couldn't have that federal government. Next one. What was the result of the Adams-Onis Treaty? Okay. Adams-Onis Treaty, here's what happens. Spain agreed to give Florida to the United States in exchange for $5 million. That's incredible, incredible. Look at the size of Florida. That's incredible. Let me pull that up here. Let's see, so you can have this. Okay. So what you have here, guys, is U.S. claims of its citizens against Spain up to $5 million. So in exchange for $5 million, the Adams-Onis Treaty, it comes into effect. What happens here, and if you want to write down the direct definition, okay, from the book on the Adams-Onis Treaty, I'll read it to you so you have it, okay? The Adams-Onis Treaty, it's an 1821 treaty between Spain and the United States in which Spain agrees to sell Florida to the U.S. So Spain agrees to sell Florida to the United States. And here, you do need this too, guys. The southern boundary of Louisiana Purchase is clarified. Southern boundary right here of Louisiana Purchase is clarified. Those are the Adams-Onis boundaries. Adams-Onis Treaty lines. You're going to want to jot that down. That's the southern boundaries. What was the purpose of the Monroe Doctrine? Guys, we're going to make sure we have a lot here. What was the purpose of the Monroe Doctrine? Here's what I need you to have. The U.S. is going to stay out of European affairs. The U.S. is going to stay out of European affairs. Please make sure you have that, guys. It's really, really important. Monroe said the United States would not interfere in affairs of European nations or existing colonies of European nations. 293 if you want help. Monroe Doctrine also stated that the U.S. would oppose any attempt to reclaim old colonies or build new colonies in the Americas. Now, the U.S., you want to make sure you have this, the U.S. becomes this type of police force. The U.S. becomes this type of police force in a way here. Because the United States is becoming stronger. The United States becomes stronger. The Monroe Doctrine grows in importance. And the United States successfully challenges European intervention. Okay? Other nations aren't able to do so, but the United States does have this strength to do so. You also need this here, guys. This important one. The Monroe Doctrine warns European nations that they cannot set up colonies. I said it, I want to say it again. Or interfere in Latin American problems anymore. Okay? U.S. would stay out of European affairs, and U.S. would not leave North and South America to fend for themselves. The U.S. would protect North and South America from any European influence. Okay, let's say North America, that's the entire United States. Well, not yet. What I'd like you to do is jot down number wrong on the top. You have a little brief assessment as well. Make sure you follow along very carefully. Make sure you're detailed. Until next time, a great Union history live from Florida. We will see you there once we're able to get there. Take care, stay well, and don't forget about the virtual church. Thank you.